Most men think they need money, looks, or status to win a woman's heart. They chase, they impress, they try too hard. But the truth, 99% of men overlook the one thing that makes women naturally drawn to you: stoic strength, the calm, grounded, powerful presence of a man who doesn't flinch, a man who leads himself first, and women can sense it instantly. You don't need to talk a lot. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove anything. The man who can sit in silence without anxiety radiates power. Most men can't. They fill the space with nervous energy, jokes, or fake confidence. But a stoic man, he's composed, collected, present. That presence, it's magnetic. Emotional mastery, the ultimate attraction. A man who can control his emotions is rare and desirable. Not cold, not emotionless, but in control. He doesn't react when things don't go his way. He doesn't lose his cool when she tests him, because he understands she's not trying to destroy you, she's trying to feel you, to feel your strength. And if you pass that test, she'll trust you, admire you, and follow you. And boundaries are attractive. Here's what most men don't get. Saying no is attractive. Standing on your principles is attractive. Respecting yourself is attractive. If you're always available, if you're always adjusting for her, she'll lose interest. But if you have a mission, a code, and boundaries, she'll respect you more than the guy who constantly bends. When you're not desperate for her attention, you win her respect. When you're okay with her walking away, you become irresistible. Women want to feel chosen, but not by a man who needs them to feel whole. The man who walks away from what doesn't serve him, who doesn't beg, who doesn't chase, that man is rare, and that man is remembered. In a world of noise, a man who is still, a man who observes before he speaks, who thinks before he acts, that man stands out. He's not in a rush. He's not chasing every skirt. He's building something. His energy is directed inward first. That's Stoicism. And that's powerful. Do what 99% don't every day. You have the chance to be the 1%, not by doing more, but by mastering less. Master your emotions, master your thoughts, master your presence, and the right woman will feel it without a word. Be the calm in the chaos. Be the rock in the storm. Be the man she can't forget, because he doesn't need to be remembered. A stoic presence isn't loud, it isn't flashy, it doesn't seek attention, validation, or approval. It simply is, and in that stillness lies its power. In a world where most men chase, talk too much, overcompensate, or try to impress, a stoic man stands out by doing the opposite. He doesn't chase approval, he commands respect. He doesn't beg for attention, he draws it in naturally. Women can feel it. It's not something that needs to be explained. It's something they sense, something primal. Because when a man is truly stoic, grounded, calm, and emotionally self-possessed, he becomes magnetic. Without saying a word, he communicates strength. You see, women are wired to respond to strength, not just physical strength, but emotional and spiritual strength. The kind of strength that says, I don't need to control anything outside of me because I've mastered what's inside of me. That kind of man, the one who doesn't flinch in the face of discomfort, the one who remains calm when others panic, the one who doesn't react emotionally to every situation, that man becomes a mystery. And mystery, when paired with confidence, is irresistible. When you walk into a room and don't try to prove yourself, when you're comfortable being silent, when you don't feel the need to dominate a conversation or steal the spotlight, that's when your presence begins to speak. Because women notice more than just what you say. They notice how you hold yourself, how you carry yourself, how you look at them without flinching, how you're unaffected by the chaos around you. And in that unshaken presence, they feel safe, they feel intrigued, they feel your masculinity without you needing to flaunt it. Most men crumble under the weight of social pressure. They try to be funny, loud, charming, over the top, anything to stand out. But a stoic man understands that less is more, that true power is subtle, that real confidence doesn't need validation. He doesn't interrupt to be heard. He doesn't fill the silence with meaningless words. He's selective with his energy. His words are measured. His gaze is calm. His movements are intentional. He knows that presence is felt, not forced. What makes a Stoic man so attractive is that he is fundamentally unmoved, not emotionless, but unshaken. When a woman tests him, which all women do at some point, he doesn't react with anger, insecurity, or confusion. He smiles. He stays grounded because he knows who he is. He doesn't need to defend himself to win her over. He doesn't explain himself out of fear. He stands tall emotionally, and that kind of resilience is rare. That kind of strength is what women are drawn to, not because he's trying to impress them, but because he doesn't need to. When a man has cultivated a Stoic presence, it means he has discipline. It means he has purpose. It means he doesn't waste energy on things he can't control. And when he gives his attention to a woman, it means something. It's deliberate, it's valuable, it's not scattered or desperate, it's focused. And that's what separates him from the rest. He gives the gift of his attention sparingly because he values it, and because he values it, others do too, including women. Women love a man who can sit in stillness and be completely content. A man who doesn't rush, who doesn't need to be entertained, who is comfortable in his own skin. That comfort is contagious. It makes her feel calm, it makes her feel secure, and when a woman feels secure, she becomes more feminine, more open, more drawn to you because she feels that you can handle her energy, that you won't be shaken when she's emotional, that you won't run when things get difficult, that you're steady. And let's be honest, most men today aren't steady. They're reactive, they're needy, they're emotionally fragile. They panic when things don't go their way. They try to control everything and everyone around them. They seek constant reassurance. That's not attractive, that's not masculine. That doesn't make a woman feel safe. But a Stoic man who knows how to hold his frame, that's rare. And women recognize it instantly, even if they can't explain it. They don't want a man who tries to fix everything for them. They want a man who can hold space, who can be still, who doesn't need to match their emotional ups and downs with more drama. A man who listens, who watches, who understands, who leads by example. And a Stoic man leads by his presence alone. His silence says more than other men's paragraphs. His calm eyes say, I've been through storms and I'm still standing. That kind of energy doesn't need to sell itself. It attracts what's real and it repels what's fake. So when 99% of men are running around trying to impress women, change themselves, prove themselves, and earn validation, the 1% who are Stoic, who are deeply rooted in who they are, stand out without even trying. They become the calm in the storm, the eye of the hurricane, and women gravitate toward them, not because of what they do, but because of who they are. A Stoic presence is magnetic. And once you master it, you will need to chase anyone. They'll come to you. Emotional control is one of the most underrated strengths a man can possess. In a world where reactions are instant, where anger, frustration, and insecurity spill out at the slightest inconvenience, a man who stays calm is a rarity. He doesn't suppress his emotions, he masters them. He knows when to express them and when to hold them back. He doesn't let his emotions dictate his actions. He chooses his response, even when everything inside him wants to lash out. And that kind of control, that kind of calm under pressure, it's powerful, it's attractive. It's the mark of a high-value man. Most men are controlled by their emotions without even realizing it. They get ghosted by a woman and immediately they spiral into self-doubt, they get criticized, and they erupt in defensiveness. A woman tests them with attitude or sarcasm, and they either argue or fold. That's weakness. Not because the emotion is wrong, but because they haven't learned to manage it. Women can feel this instability. They sense when a man is fragile. When he's quick to anger or desperate for approval, and nothing turns them off faster than a man who can't control himself. But when a man has emotional control, everything changes. He doesn't need to be the loudest in the room. He doesn't need to defend himself at every turn. He doesn't need to prove his worth through arguments or explanations. He stands firm. He listens more than he reacts. He thinks before he speaks. And when he does speak, his words carry weight because they're not reactions, they're decisions. Women respect this, while a man who is not volatile. They admire the stability, the predictability, the strength of someone who isn't led by temporary feelings. Emotional control doesn't mean you don't feel anything. It means you don't let temporary feelings destroy permanent things. It means you don't let one bad moment ruin your entire day. It means you don't let one rejection make you question your worth. Most men take things personally because they haven't built inner resilience. A woman doesn't respond to a text, and suddenly they're spiraling into anger or self-pity. A friend disagrees with them and they become defensive and cold. That's emotional immaturity, and it repels people, especially women. Women often test men emotionally, not out of cruelty, but to feel what kind of man she's dealing with. She wants to know, can he stay calm when I'm upset? Can he hold space for me when I'm emotional? Can he be my rock, or will he crumble under pressure? When a man reacts with anger, pettiness, or emotional instability, she loses trust. But when he stays grounded, when he listens, stays calm, and doesn't match her storm with a storm of his own, she feels safe. And safety is the foundation of attraction. The truth is, emotional control is rare because it requires discipline, it requires awareness, it requires the strength to pause, to breathe, and to choose the high road. It's easy to react, it's easy to yell, to withdraw, to manipulate, to guilt trip, to play victim. But a man who practices Stoicism knows that none of that builds anything worth having. He knows that by controlling himself, he controls the room. He controls the energy of the interaction, and he maintains his dignity and power. People assume that emotions just happen and there's nothing you can do. But that's not true. You may not control what emotion arises, but you always control your response. That space between stimulus and response, that is where your power lives. The more you stretch that space, the more in control you become. And when a man is in control of himself, the world feels it. He becomes a force, not because he controls others, but because he governs himself. Women, especially high-quality women, are deeply intuitive. They notice how you respond under stress. They notice if your mood depends on their attention. They notice if you can't handle rejection, if you can't handle being challenged, if you lash out when your ego is touched. And they also notice when you don't. They notice when you remain steady, when you smile instead of argue, when you stay silent instead of explode. That emotional control signals strength, and that strength earns respect. It's not about being a robot. It's about being a man who can be fully present without being overrun by emotion. It's about being able to love without losing yourself, to feel deeply but not collapse, to be passionate but not irrational, to be hurt but still kind, to be tested but never shaken. That is power. That is masculinity. And that is what sets you apart from 99% of men. A man who has mastered emotional control becomes unshakable. He becomes the leader in every room. He commands trust without force. He doesn't need to raise his voice because his silence carries weight. He doesn't need to act tough because his calm is intimidating enough. He doesn't need to chase validation because his self-worth is rooted in something deeper. And when a man like that walks into a woman's life, he changes everything, not because he tries to, but because he's already mastered the one thing she didn't even know she was searching for. Setting boundaries and keeping them is one of the most powerful things a man can do, not just in relationships, but in life. Boundaries are a direct reflection of self-respect. They tell the world what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you refuse to accept. Most men don't set clear boundaries because they're afraid of being disliked, afraid of losing someone, afraid of confrontation. But in that fear, they slowly destroy their own value. They become pushovers. They bend. They tolerate behavior that chips away at their confidence. And women notice it. They don't say it out loud, but they feel it. And the moment a man abandons his boundaries for a woman, she starts to lose respect for him. Not because he's mean, but because he's weak. A high-value man knows that love doesn't mean surrendering his standards. He doesn't say yes just to keep the peace. He doesn't allow disrespect just to keep someone around. He doesn't tolerate being mistreated in the name of patience or understanding. He knows who he is. He knows what matters to him. And he draws a line, not to push people away, but to protect his peace. He's not aggressive. He's assertive. And that difference is everything. Aggression comes from insecurity. Assertiveness comes from clarity. Most men have never truly been taught the value of boundaries. They've been taught to be agreeable, to be nice, to not upset anyone. But women aren't drawn to men who constantly seek harmony at their own expense. They're drawn to men who can stand firm even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. A man who can say no without guilt is a man who values himself. A man who doesn't change his principles depending on who's watching is a man who commands respect. And respect is the foundation of attraction. When a woman tests your boundaries, and she will, it's not always because she's malicious. Sometimes she's subconsciously trying to figure out where your limits are. She wants to know if you'll stand up for yourself. She wants to know if you're the kind of man who leads or the kind who follows whatever she says. If you allow things that go against your values, if you accept behavior that makes you uncomfortable just to keep her around, you lose a piece of yourself. And she feels that. She sees it in your hesitation. She hears it in your tone. She senses that you're not sure of yourself. And once that trust in your strength fades, so does the desire. Keeping your boundaries isn't just about what you say, it's about what you do. Words mean nothing if your actions don't back them up. If you say, I won't tolerate disrespect, but then stay with someone who constantly belittles you, you're teaching them that your words are meaningless. If you say, I need space to work on my goals, but then let your entire schedule be rearranged at someone else's whim, you're showing them that your purpose comes second. And no woman will respect a man who puts himself last. The truth is, boundaries filter out the wrong people and attract the right ones. The people who truly care about you will respect your limits. They may not always agree with them, but they will honor them. And those who get angry when you set boundaries were only benefiting from you having none. A man who lives without boundaries becomes drained, resentful, and confused. He loses his sense of direction. He gives so much to others that he forgets to give to himself, and in the process he loses his edge. His energy becomes scattered, his confidence fades, and women pick up on that lack of direction instantly. On the other hand, a man with strong boundaries is calm, clear, and confident. He doesn't panic when someone walks away. He doesn't chase after people who cross his line. He doesn't explain himself repeatedly, hoping to be understood. He says what he means, and he means what he says. His time is protected. His energy is guarded. His self-worth is non-negotiable. And that level of self-respect is incredibly attractive. Women want a man who can lead himself, who doesn't get thrown off by emotional chaos, who knows where he's going and doesn't detour just to please someone for a moment. When you have boundaries, you show that your life has structure, that your emotions aren't up for grabs, that your mind can't be manipulated, and that your heart is protected, not closed, but guarded with wisdom. Weak men fold under pressure. Strong men stay rooted, and rooted men are rare. Most are drifting, saying yes to things they hate, agreeing to terms they never chose, afraid to walk away from what doesn't serve them. But the man who sets his boundary and holds it no matter what, he's the man others follow. He's the man women admire, not because he controls anyone else, but because he refuses to be controlled. When you live with clear boundaries, you're not just telling others how to treat you, you're showing them how you treat yourself. And once you build that inner respect, the outer world begins to reflect it. Not everyone will like it, not everyone will stay, but those who do will know they're standing beside a man who cannot be moved, and that kind of man is unforgettable. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood qualities in the world of masculinity and relationships. People often confuse confuse detachment with coldness or disinterest, but true detachment is something far deeper and far more powerful. Detachment means your value, your happiness, and your identity are not tied to the outcome of a single interaction, a single woman, or a single situation. It means you can want something without needing it. You can love without clinging. You can care without losing yourself. And that kind of man, the one who can walk away, the one who doesn't chase, the one who isn't afraid to lose, is the man who becomes truly irresistible. Desire is fueled by mystery, independence, and strength. When you're overly available, when you constantly seek validation, when you emotionally invest in someone who hasn't earned it, you smother the tension that creates attraction. But when you show that you are content with or without her, when you are not emotionally dependent on her response, when your presence feels like a gift, not a plea, that's when desire begins to build. Women feel drawn to men who are rooted in themselves, men who are okay whether she stays or goes, men who have a life so full of purpose that she becomes a complement, not a centerpiece. That's what detachment really is, freedom from emotional dependence. Most men chase women from a place of lack. They think if they get the girl, they'll finally feel whole. They overtext, overthink, over-explain. They rearrange their schedules, compromise their values, and abandon their self-respect for the chance to be chosen. And ironically, this desperation kills attraction. You cannot create desire when your energy screams, "Please pick me." You cannot create tension when your entire emotional state is based on her attention. Women don't want a man who makes her his world from the first moment. They want a man who already has a world, and she gets the privilege of being invited into it. When you are detached, you operate differently. You approach women not with pressure, but with peace. You don't need them to respond in a certain way to feel good about yourself. If she's into you, great. If not, you move on without resentment. That calm, unbothered energy is rare, and it's magnetic because women aren't used to it. Most men either chase relentlessly or withdraw out of fear, but the detached man stands in the middle. He engages but doesn't chase. He listens but doesn't over-invest. He offers presence but doesn't beg for attention. Detachment is also power because it puts the frame of the relationship in your hands. Whoever is less emotionally reactive holds the frame. When you are detached, you don't flinch when she pulls back. You don't panic when she tests you. You don't change who you are to win her back. You stay the course, you keep living your life, focused on your mission, and often, because women are so attuned to energy, she feels that shift. She senses that you're not clinging, that you're not affected, that you're centered, and that draws her in. It creates curiosity. Why isn't he chasing me? Why is he so calm? What's he have going on that he doesn't need me? Desire is not created through possession. It's created through presence and mystery. When you are detached, you create emotional space, and space is what allows attraction to grow. If you're always available, always explaining, always there, there's no room for her to miss you, no room for her to wonder, no room for her to feel your absence and desire your return. Detachment allows you to pull back with confidence, not as a tactic, but as a way of being, because you're not chasing, you're choosing. And women are far more drawn to men who choose than men who beg. The truth is, detachment is not about caring less, it's about caring wisely. You still show up, you still communicate, you still give, but you don't give more than is being reciprocated. You don't tolerate disrespect. You don't force things. You don't make someone your priority when you're just their option. Detachment allows you to love from a place of strength, to walk away when it's not mutual, to say, I want you, but I don't need you. And that line, that energy, that is what creates desire. Women are emotional creatures, deeply responsive to subtle cues. They don't always consciously know why they lose interest in some men and obsess over others, but often it comes down to energy. The man who is needy, emotionally attached, and constantly trying to please, he feels heavy. But the man who is detached, calm, and fully grounded in his own life, he feels light, strong, and intriguing. That contrast is everything. Detachment also protects you from emotional manipulation. When you're not emotionally dependent, no one can use your feelings against you. You don't get baited into arguments. You don't tolerate drama. You don't allow guilt or pressure to dictate your choices. You keep your peace no matter what happens. That unshakable foundation is rare. And it's exactly what women find irresistible. Not because you don't care, but because you care from a place of power, not desperation. In the end, the man who detaches becomes unforgettable, not because he tries to be, but because he represents a type of strength most women never experience. He's the one who didn't chase, didn't beg, didn't fold. He's the one who kept living, kept building, kept growing with or without her. And that energy doesn't just create desire, it creates respect, it creates loyalty, and it creates attraction that lasts. Stillness commands respect because it radiates power without needing to prove anything. In a world that constantly demands noise, movement, and reaction, the man who remains still becomes an anomaly, something rare, something intriguing, something strong. Stillness isn't about doing nothing. It's about having complete control over your presence, your energy, and your responses. It's about being so grounded in who you are that nothing outside of you can shake your foundation. When you embody stillness, you stop chasing approval. You stop reacting emotionally to every situation. You start listening more and speaking less. And when you do speak, people listen, because your words are not rushed or reactive. They are intentional. But most men today are ruled by impulse. They respond immediately to provocation. They feel the need to explain themselves at every turn. They speak without thinking, act without pausing, and expose their emotional chaos in every conversation. This is seen as weakness, not because emotion is weakness, but because lack of discipline is. When a man cannot hold himself in silence, when he cannot wait, when he cannot process before responding, he shows everyone that he is governed by external forces. He becomes predictable, easy to read, and easier to manipulate. But the man who stays still, he is unreadable, he is unpredictable, he is untouchable. Women especially are highly sensitive to the energy a man gives off. They notice his body language, his tone, his emotional control, and his timing. A man who can remain calm under pressure, who doesn't flinch when she gets emotional, who doesn't interrupt when she challenges him, who doesn't get defensive when she pulls away, immediately separates himself from the rest. That stillness is not emptiness, it's control. It's the awareness that not every emotion requires expression. Not every challenge needs a reaction. Not every silence needs to be filled. In fact, it's often in those silences that power is truly felt. Stillness is the domain of a man who knows his worth. He doesn't need to talk about it. He doesn't need to announce it. He simply carries it with him. His posture is relaxed but alert. His eyes are focused but not aggressive. His breathing is steady. His responses are measured, and people notice. Because in a world of constant motion and noise, stillness stands out. It makes people lean in. It demands presence. Most men fear stillness because it feels vulnerable. They're used to filling space with jokes, stories, explanations, or even arguments. They believe that if they don't constantly prove themselves, they'll be forgotten. But true presence isn't about performance. It's about energy. A still man can walk into a room and instantly shift the atmosphere, not by what he says, but by what he doesn't need to say. His calmness makes others curious. His restraint commands attention. He doesn't chase the spotlight, he becomes the spotlight. Stillness is also a mark of emotional mastery. It shows that a man doesn't need to vent every feeling, win every debate, or correct every misunderstanding. He chooses where to invest his energy. He conserves his power. He speaks only when necessary, and when he does, it matters. This kind of restraint is not weakness, it's supreme confidence. It's the quiet authority that makes people rethink their assumptions and consider his perspective more deeply. It's the kind of energy that makes women feel both safe and captivated. In relationships, stillness becomes even more powerful. When a woman is emotional, chaotic, or testing boundaries, most men escalate or fold. They either argue or submit. But the still man does neither. He listens, he breathes, he waits, he allows the storm to pass without being drawn into it. And when he finally responds, his voice is calm and clear. That stability is what women crave, someone who can anchor them, not match their emotional wave. A man who is still in the storm becomes unforgettable. He becomes the man she trusts, the man she respects, the man she remembers. Stillness is also a product of purpose. A man with vision and discipline doesn't have time to react to every petty conflict. He's too focused on the bigger picture. His stillness is not passivity, it's focus. It's the ability to stay centered on his goals regardless of distractions. And that focus radiates. It shows in his posture, in his walk, in his conversations. He doesn't fidget. He doesn't chase validation. He moves with intent. He speaks with weight. And because of that, people follow his lead without him needing to force anything. Stillness is not about being emotionless. It's about channeling emotion with precision. It's the skill of the warrior, the discipline of the philosopher, and the calm of the leader. It's the ability to pause before speaking, to observe before acting, to wait before reacting. It's choosing wisdom over impulse, strategy over drama, and clarity over chaos. It's what separates boys from men, followers from leaders, and noise from signal. Ultimately, stillness is the embodiment of self-mastery. It's the quiet fire that burns without flashing. It's the steady presence that anchors every room it enters. It's the invisible force that demands respect without a single word. And once a man learns to live in that stillness, he no longer needs to chase anything, because everything worth having begins to move toward him. Women are instinctively drawn to a man who is on a mission, not because he's rich, not because he's popular, and not because he's good looking, but because he's driven. He has direction. He knows where he's going, and he doesn't need anyone's permission to get there. That kind of energy is magnetic. It speaks louder than words, louder than compliments, louder than charm. A man with a mission radiates purpose, and purpose is what sets him apart from the majority of men who drift through life aimlessly, hoping something or someone will give them meaning. Women don't want to be your meaning. They want to be part of your A man who is mission-driven isn't obsessed with trying to impress. He doesn't chase approval, he doesn't cling to relationships, and he doesn't waste his time trying to prove himself to people who don't matter. His mission keeps him grounded, it gives him focus, it fuels his decisions. Whether that mission is building a business, developing a skill, mastering his craft, or becoming the best version of himself, it gives him something to wake up for, something bigger than temporary pleasure, something deeper than momentary validation. That kind of purpose creates gravity. People feel it, and women feel it most. A man on a mission doesn't put his life on hold for anyone. He doesn't cancel his goals to keep someone interested. He doesn't slow down to match the pace of people who aren't moving. He's not cold or uncaring. He's committed. And that commitment to something bigger than himself is what makes him so attractive. Women may say they want attention, affection, and consistency, and they do, but what they really crave is to feel like they're joining a man who has somewhere to go, a man who is building something, a man who doesn't just talk about dreams but lives them out in real time. There is something incredibly powerful about a man who knows his lane and stays in it. He isn't swayed by opinions, he isn't distracted by drama, he isn't caught up in trends or gossip. He's too focused, too locked in. He understands that time is limited and that every hour counts. That energy is rare, and that rarity is what makes it so attractive. Most men are reactive. They follow whatever grabs their attention. But a mission is proactive. He shapes his day, he builds his future, he leads his life. And women want to be led, not controlled, but inspired. When you're on a mission, you don't chase women, you attract them. You become so consumed with your vision that you stop looking around for approval. And in that space, when your energy is no longer desperate, when your focus is no longer scattered, something changes. Women, begin to notice you differently, not because you're louder, but because you're deeper, not because you're chasing them, but because you're pursuing something meaningful, and that pursuit creates presence that speaks for you before you even say a word. A mission gives you edge, it gives you standards, it gives you boundaries. You're no longer available for things that waste your time, drain your energy, or pull you off course. And that self-respect becomes obvious to everyone around you. Women respect men who respect themselves. They're drawn to men who prioritize their path, not because it means ignoring her, but because it means you won't abandon yourself for her. That strength, that refusal to shrink or compromise your vision is what makes a woman feel safe, not because you'll protect her every moment, but because she knows you won't fold under pressure. You're dependable, you're solid, you're going somewhere, and she wants to be part of it. A mission also protects you from emotional dependence. When you don't have a bigger purpose, it's easy to make a woman your entire world. And that's when problems begin. She becomes your source of validation. Your mood depends on her attention. Your confidence rises and falls with her responses. That kind of neediness is repelling. But when you're driven by something bigger, something that existed before her and will continue with or without her, you bring balance. You're not there to take, you're there to share. And that energy creates space for real connection, not codependency. Even when relationships go wrong, your mission saves you. A breakup doesn't destroy you because your identity was never based on her in the first place. You feel the pain, but you don't lose yourself. You keep moving, you keep building. And in doing so, you become even more attractive, because nothing is more magnetic than a man who refuses to quit. A man who chooses his mission again and again, no matter who leaves, no matter what happens. That kind of man becomes a force. And forces don't chase, they attract. Women may not always be able to articulate it, but they know it when they feel it. A man who is driven, passionate, and disciplined. A man who doesn't need her, but chooses her. A man whose love is strong because his purpose is stronger. That's the man she remembers. That's the man she respects, and that's the man she will chase, because he's already chasing something greater. So here's the truth. 99% of men will keep chasing, reacting, pleasing, and performing, hoping to earn love by sacrificing themselves. But the 1%, they choose a different path. They choose stillness over noise, purpose over desperation, discipline over emotion, and presence over performance. That's what Stoicism teaches you. Not to be cold, but to be unshakable. Not to feel less, but to master what you feel the moment you stop needing validation and start living by your values. Everything changes. Women feel it, people notice it, and most importantly, you become someone you respect. So if you're tired of being overlooked, misunderstood, or taken for granted, stop chasing, start becoming, because when you walk in calm confidence, speak with quiet conviction, and lead your life with purpose, you won't need to convince anyone of your worth. They'll feel it before you even say a word. Do it now. Be the 1%.